As we learned earlier this semester, every message we have has a content dimension and a relational dimension. So remember, the content dimension deals with the subject matter of what we're talking about, but then the relational aspect of the message discloses how the parties feel about each other. And when we start thinking about our communication with others, it's not so much what we say, the content of what we say that makes someone really happy or someone upset, but it's the relational message. It's how we say it. So let's take a look at a few of these types of relational messages. The first type of relational message we have is the affinity. Now, the affinity is the degree in which people like or appreciate one another, and we get that through the nonverbal communication of our messages. The next type of relational message is the immediacy, and this refers to the degree of interest and attention that we feel towards and communicate to others. So a great deal of immediacy comes from nonverbal communication such as eye contact, facial expressions, tone of voice, and the distance we put between ourselves and others. A great deal of immediacy comes from nonverbal behaviors such as eye contact, facial expression, tone of voice, and the distance we put between ourselves and others. Next is respect. So it's possible to like each other without respecting each other. So respect may sound similar to affinity, but they're different. Affinity involves liking, respect involves esteem. So it's possible to like others without really respecting them. So respect is an incredibly important ingredient in good relationships. In fact, it is a better predictor of relational satisfaction than liking or even loving. The same principle holds on the job where having your opinions count often matters more than being popular. Even in more personal relationships, conflicts often focus on the issues of respect. So being taken seriously is a vital ingredient of self-esteem. The final type of relational message we have is control. Now there's a couple of different directions we can go with control. We can have conversational control as well as decision control. So conversational controls look at who talks the most, who interrupts more, who changes the topic most often, how long we speak for, when we speak for. And the decision control is who has the power to determine what will happen in the relationship. What are we going to do Saturday night? Should we use our savings to fix the house or to take a vacation? How much time should we spend together and how much time should we spend apart? Now, relational problems arise when the people involved don't have similar ideas about the distribution of control. So most healthy relationships handle the distribution of control in a flexible way. So rather than clinging to the lopsidedness of one-up and one-down relationships, or the unrealistic equality of complete shared responsibility, partners shift between the one-up and the one-down position and straight across roles. A very valuable term to learn about is meta-communication, and meta-communication describes messages that people exchange both verbally and non-verbally about the relationship. So, in other words, meta-communication is communication about communication. Examples would be things like, I hate it when you use that tone of voice, or I appreciate how honest you've been with me. Verbal meta-communication is a central ingredient in successful relationships. So sooner or later it becomes necessary to talk about what's going on between you two and the other person. The ability to focus on the kinds of issues described here can keep a relationship on track. Now, meta-communication isn't all about problems. Now, it's a wonderful way to reinforce the satisfying aspects of a relationship. I appreciate when you compliment me in my work in front of my boss. So comments like this serve two functions. One, they let the other person know that you value their behavior, and second, they boost the odds that the other person will continue this behavior in the future. Relational maintenance is used to describe communication that keeps relationships running smoothly and satisfactorily. What kinds of communication help relationships satisfying? Well, researchers have identified 5 strategies. Number 1 is positivity, so keeping the relational climate polite and upbeat, and also avoiding criticism. Openness, talking directly about the nature of the relationship and disclosing your personal needs and concerns. Number 3, assurances, letting the other person know both verbally and non-verbally that he or she matters to you and that you are committed to the relationship. Number 4 is social networks, being invested in each other's friends, family, and loved ones. And number 5, sharing tasks, helping one another take on life's chores and obligations. Social support is about helping loved ones during challenging times and providing emotional information or instrumental resources. So communication plays a central role in giving this aid to those we love. So here's a closer look at how those 3 support resources. Number 1, emotional support. Few things are more helpful during times of stress, hurt, or grief than a loved one who listens with empathy and responds to caring ways. Number 2, informational support. The closest people in our lives can often be our best information sources. They can give us recommendations for shopping, advice, relationships, or observations about our blind spots. Now, you could probably recall times when you said to a loved one with gratitude, "Thanks for letting me know." Of course, it's important to remember these tips about giving advice. Instrumental support. Sometimes support is best given by rolling up our sleeves and doing a task or a favor for a person you love. Now, this could be as simple as a ride to the airport or as involved as caregiving during an illness. So we count on romantic partners and family members to offer assistance in times of need, and instrumental support is a primary marker of a close relationship. There will be times when our relationships are damaged, so sooner or later even the strongest relationships hit a bumpy patch. Some problems arise from outside forces such as work, money, competing relationships, and so on. At other times, problems arise from differences and disagreements within your relationship. Now, a third type of relationship problem comes from relational transgressions, and that's when one partner violates the explicit or implicit terms of a relationship, letting the other one down and in some important way. Now, here are a few types of relational transgressions. A lack of commitment. This is demonstrated by a failure to honor important obligations such as financial, emotional, or task-related. Self-serving dishonesty, unfaithfulness, distance, so physical separation or a psychological separation, disrespect through criticism, problematic emotions as jealousy, unjust suspicion, rage, and aggression, verbal hostility, and physical violence. So as you think about transgressions you've experienced, you'll recognize that there are several dimensions to each one. Minor versus significant. Some of the behavior described above aren't inherently transgressions, and in small doses they can actually aid relationships. For instance, a little distance can make the heart grow fonder. A little jealousy can be a sign of affection, and a little anger can start the process of resolving a gripe. Now, in larger, regular doses, however, these acts become serious transgressions that can damage personal relationships. Social versus relational. Some transgressions violate social rules shared by society at large. For example, almost everyone would agree that ridiculing or humiliating a family or a friend in public is a violation of fundamental social rule regarding saving others' face. Other rules are relational in nature, unique norms constructed by the parties involved. For instance, in some families, having a rule stating, if I'm going to be more than a little bit late, I will let you know, so don't worry. Next, we have deliberate versus unintentional. Some transgressions are unintentional. You might reveal something about a friend's past without realizing that this disclosure would be embarrassing. Other violations, though, are intentional. In a fit of anger, you might purposely lash out with a cruel comment, knowing that it will hurt the other person's feelings. One time versus incremental. The most obvious transgressions occur in a single episode, an act of betrayal, a verbal assault, or stalking out in anger. But the more subtle transgressions can occur over time. Consider emotional withdrawal. Everybody has times when they need isolation, and we usually give one another some space just to do that. But if the withdrawal slowly becomes pervasive, it becomes a violation of the fundamental rule in most relationships that partners should be available to one another. Research confirms that common sense notion that the first step toward repairing transgression is to talk about the violation. Now, there are several ways to make amends. 1, expressing regret. 2, accepting responsibility. 3, making restitutions. What can I do to make it right? Genuinely repenting. I will try not to do that ever again. Requesting forgiveness. Will you please forgive me? Now, what do you do if you're on the receiving end of a transgression? Here we have acceptance, rejection, and discussion. So under acceptance, we may say something like, I'm glad you understand why I was so upset. I sure hope it won't happen again. Rejection. I can't let that go on. I can't let that one go, at least for now. It's too hurtful. Words can't make up for what you did. And discussion. I appreciate the apology, but I don't think you understand why this is such a big deal for me. Or, how can I be sure you won't do the same thing again? So relationships is a very challenging thing because they require a lot of maintenance. And in this section, we saw quite a few strategies in regards to how to maintain those relationships.